Coming up on Newswatch in Focus, the Republican and Democratic National Conventions have wrapped up. We'll have a local take on them coming up in our studios. Stay tuned. Newswatch in Focus starts right now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. This week we're talking about the Democratic and Republican National Conventions, which have recently wrapped up. We'll have in-studio guests to break it down for you in just a moment, but first, here's a look at some of the coverage from CNN.
President Barack Obama took the stage to tell thousands in Charlotte and millions across the country that this election will make a monumental difference in the future of the nation.
But when all is said and done, when you pick up that ballot to vote, you will face the clearest choice of any time in a generation. It will be a choice between two different paths for America, a choice between two fundamentally different visions for the future.
Obama says he knows the hope he promised 4 years ago has been tested, but urged patience.
America, I never said this journey would be easy. And I won't promise that now. Yes, our path is harder, but it leads to a better place.
The path back to work has been very slow for many Americans, and the just-released August jobs report was another disappointment. Vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan tells CNBC the president's policies are to blame.
This is not an economic recovery. We are limping along. This is stagnant growth. For every person who got a job, nearly 4 people stopped looking for a job. That's not a statistic to brag about.
Now that the conventions are over, the candidates hit the campaign trail, and a certain topic today will be the August jobs report. 96,000 jobs were created in August. That is short of expectations, and both Democrats and Republicans are sure to have reaction as they visit New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada today. In Washington, I'm Stacey Cohan reporting.
Thanks for watching Newswatch in Focus. Did you know full episodes of our show are available on YouTube? Go to www.youtube.com/WEIUTV and click on the Newswatch in Focus playlist. Each week we'll put a new episode of Newswatch in Focus online. For more information and news, visit our website at weiu.net 24 hours a day. Thanks for joining us here in the studio now on Newswatch in Focus today. You just saw some wrap-up coverage from the Democratic National Convention as well as a little bit of coverage about the Republican National Convention. So we now have local representatives here in the studio with us today. Joining me now are Dr. Robert Webb from the Coles County Democrats. You're actually a former chair. That's correct. Okay. And also we have Mike Weaver from the Coles County Republican Party, also a former chair. So gentlemen, we thank you for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining me. Well, we'll get right to it. We'll start with, I would like you each to kind of give me your individual take on your respective conferences. So I'll start with Mr. Webb here. Could you please tell me kind of your thoughts and your takeaways from the Democratic National Convention this week?
Well, of course, as you know, it ended last night with the acceptance of the nomination by President Obama. And there were several highlights, I think, that people talk about. One is ex-President Clinton's speech, kind of a rousing speech to the convention, in which he kind of went back and kind of brought us up to date over the last, I guess, 8 years or so. And then, of course, Michelle Obama, and she talked about her husband and the president, more personal side of the president than we usually hear about. And then, of course, President Obama's speech last night. Well, conventions are always exciting. And they're designed to sort of bring the party together and kind of get ready to launch the campaign for the election. So I think they're important from that aspect. From the Democratic convention, I think the main focus that came out of that was the fact that really there is a choice. And some people say, well, you know, there's a lot of polarization now, but some other people say, well, that's good. We have a choice between the two parties, and the two parties have different ideas about how the country ought to proceed from here. So that's probably a good thing. And the focus of the Democratic Party was to say, here's our focus on such things as the economy, health care, and all of the other big issues in our country. So that was, I thought they did a good job of putting forth what their platform will be.
Okay. And Mike, do you want to go ahead and give us your take on kind of the Republican National Convention? That was a while back now, but let's maybe remind
Well, it hasn't
people.
been that long ago. As a matter of
Right.
fact, I think this is the first time in 40 years that the two conventions have been run concurrently, or one right
So
after
close
another one.
together, right.
That's why, at least I'm hearing that the bounce that anyone expects is really not going to be there, because number one, you've got a lot of voters who have already made up their minds, and so the uncommitted voters are a smaller number. But it's just an opportunity as a party to get together and put together an official platform of what the party believes in and where the party wants to go. Plus, it offers an opportunity to showcase candidates, not only the candidates running for president and vice president, but also rising stars that you may see offering themselves in the years to come for higher office. And we saw quite a bit of that at the Republican convention with the Latino governors, the female governors that spoke several times. And of course, Marco Rubio from Florida was just knocked it out of the park. I mean, he was, I think, probably the number one focal point of the whole Republican convention, because everyone was waiting to see what he was going to say. And his comments about his father having tended bar in the back of the meeting hall so that he could grow up and speak from the podium in the front of the meeting hall was really one of the more memorable lines of the entire convention. But Dr. Webb is correct. It's an opportunity for each party to put forth their platform and their ideas and their options for the voters out there. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people outside the party faithful that really watch the conventions. All they see are the 30-second bites that come on at the news programs every night, and try and gather what they can from that. But there is some local effect. It does have an energizing effect on local people. Even though they don't watch it, they still talk about it. I've been probably every place I go during the week, I hear people talking about the conventions and what was said and what was done and what that has done to help formulate their perception of who they may vote for. So that's a good process.
So, in that respect then, is there something that your parties do locally, to kind of as a takeoff of that, to get people around here excited and informed? Because you said, a lot of people don't watch it. So, as the Democratic and Republican Party here in Coles County, what are you then doing to kind of bring the local people into that? What are you doing to get them informed and excited?
Well, the Democrats opened their campaign office here in Charleston on the square. Mm-hmm. And last night, for example, they had an open house with refreshments, and people gathered, and then they watched President Obama's acceptance speech together. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of a part of trying to bring people in on it and get people excited about it. Mm-hmm. And then they have some communications with voters or particularly party activists, in trying to, now it's time to get out and start talking to people about the election, which is, people always talk about the election as election day, but actually, as Mike has indicated, voting starts shortly.
Shortly, yeah.
Right,
Very shortly.
early voting and such.
And so I always say that there is no anymore, the election day is the final day for voting.
Right.
And so voters need to, can start voting here pretty quickly.
Right. So what about the Republican Party? Do you have anything similar?
Well, we were fortunate to have a local member, another former Republican county chairman, actually go down to the convention, he and his wife, and so they've been sharing their experience down there almost daily online and with our website. So our membership has been able to access and live through what they're living through and the people that they meet, and that's, I think, probably the most striking effect of their having been down there was all of the people you read about and you see in the news, they get to meet. They get a chance to walk up and shake their hand and ask them questions. And so, and we're also going to have them, I hope, give a brief rundown of their impression of the convention at our next meeting at the end of this month. So, yeah, it's been really close to home, and it's been something that we can all share in the experience.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the issues. You know, of course, there's different perspectives on many of the issues, but what did you see? What do you each see as the big issues in this campaign?
Well, there are several, I think, obviously. I think healthcare is perhaps number one, because the two parties have taken almost totally opposing positions with regard to healthcare. The Republican Party has vowed to terminate the Affordable Health Care Act if they are elected. So that's a major issue, and one that affects people all across the country. Of course, the Medicare and Social Security, Medicaid, those are all issues. I think that there's not quite the disparity in, although they debate it quite a bit, I don't think there's quite the disparities between the parties about what to do with those particular issues as there is on the Affordable Health Care Act. So those are important. I think aid to higher education, students who are now struggling with the high cost of attending college, university, and what the government's role is in trying to negate some of those issues. That's I think, a major issue. You don't hear quite as much this year as you have in the past about international problems, it seems, as we've heard on past elections. So those are just some of them, and there are others.
Do you have things you want to add?
Well, I couldn't disagree more. The number one issue, according to every survey I've read in the last 6 months, is jobs. Without jobs, this economy doesn't move forward. Without jobs, people cannot afford to buy homes. Without jobs, people cannot afford to take care of their medical problems. Without jobs, people cannot afford to send their kids to school. It just has a ripple effect throughout our economy. And with the jobs report this morning coming out, it went from 8.3 to 8.1%. But when you take a look at the hard numbers from the Department of Labor, only 96,000 jobs were created, but there were 368,000 people that actually left the workforce. And so we have more than 23 million people in this country who are either underemployed or unemployed, and that has a major effect on the engine, the economic engine that drives this country. So unless we deal with the jobs and the economic situation of this country, everything else is secondary.
And what are you seeing, how these are affecting, people right here at home, right here in Central Illinois? What are you seeing as the trickle down from that?
Trickle down from what?
From these major issues. We can start with jobs if you want, per se. So how is that affecting local?
Well, of course, the unemployment rate is reflected here in the county as well, and we have a fairly high percentage of people. I don't know, I haven't checked the most recent number here in Coles County, but it's reflective of what's true in the state. So as Mike says, it's a major issue for our people. And although Coles County does have some advantages in that we have some organizations that are not quite as recession affected by as much recession as others, like the universities and Lakeland College, the Sarah Bush. So we are protected somewhat from all the most severe results of the unemployment. But nevertheless, it's a major issue, of course. I agree.
You want to add to that?
Well, and unfortunately in Illinois, we're hit with a double whammy.
Right.
Not only do we have a national economic situation, but the state of Illinois, depending upon the surveys that you read, is either the number one or number two worst state in the country in terms of the outstanding debt that we have, the unfunded liabilities that we have, and our budget crisis. We have a budget crisis in Illinois that's second only to, I think, New Jersey and to California. So we've got some serious economic problems here at more the local level rather than just nationally. And we have to basically scrimp and scratch for every new job that we create. And unfortunately, with some of the policies coming out of Washington, there are approximately 4,100 new regulations set to go into effect after the first of the year, which can only impede businesses hiring of new employees. So unless we make some changes, things are not only not going to get better, they're going to get worse.
Do you have any response to that?
Well, regulations, of course, are usually designed to try to improve a process or a situation. So I don't agree that the job situation is affected primarily by regulations. Everybody knows that our economy has gone in cycles going back to the Middle Ages. So, and that happens under both parties, always has. Sometimes one part or the other is lucky enough to be in power when the economy is going up, and other times when it's going down. So these cycles in our economic system have been consistent. The ability of a president to change that very much is not too great. For that reason, I don't blame President Bush for the recession, nor do I blame President Obama for the fact that we're not completely out of it. Those are economic cycles. Now, there are things that government can do to to influence it, but basically, those have been going on since the Middle Ages.
Okay. Do you agree, disagree?
There is some cyclical nature to economies across the world, but right now we're such a world economy that some things overseas are affecting us. The bump this morning in the stock market was not because of anything happening in the U.S. It was because the Eurodollar has, the central bank over there has agreed to buy more bonds, more European bonds, and so our economy is somewhat hinged on their economy. However, you were talking about bringing it down to a local level. Some of the conversations I've had with local folks in terms of the economy and how things are affected by who's in charge, by who's in leadership, I just keep coming back to the old saying about fool me once, shame on you, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. If I were to hire a plumber, I had a leak spring in my basement, and I were to hire a plumber, and he came out and not only didn't improve the situation, but actually made it worse, I don't know that I'd hire that plumber again. And that's what we're faced with now. President Obama has impaneled the Simpson-Bowles Commission, and then basically ignored everything that they recommended. He put together a jobs council. They have not even met this year. As a matter of fact, their chairman, Jeffrey Immelt, has resigned because he's so frustrated that the Job Council hasn't even met. So if our leadership is not taking charge of trying to guide our economy to better waters, we need new leadership.
Do you have any response to that?
Well, I'll use the plumber analogy.
Okay.
If Mr. Weaver had a problem with his plumbing, maybe it was the previous plumber who did it.
Okay.
So I think by and large, the leadership of both parties have as an objective the improvement of the economy, the improvement of small business, the improvement of health care. So I don't think there's any basic difference in the overall objectives. But what we're talking about is how do you go about it? And as we've said before, there are true differences, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with the fact that leadership of the Republican Party has different ideas about how to solve these problems. So, and it gives the voter an option. And the conventions lay out those options.
Yeah.
And so I think that's fine.
Okay.
And I, of course, tend to support, for the most part, those policies that are proposed by the Democratic Party. And I could talk for a long time about why that is in each case.
Sure.
But I think that's we're a democracy, and that's the way democracies ought to work.
Okay. Well, we're got a few minutes left here, so I kind of want to cover one more topic in general. Did you have something you wanted? But I want to talk about working together. We were kind of leading into that, and I know they covered that in some of the speeches at the conventions. What are your thoughts on, especially local parties? Locally, the parties working together. Maybe start.
Well, on local issues, it tends to be less partisan, and both Webb and I have been on the county board. I'm still on the county board, but this is my last term. So, and that's government at its most local level, and I think probably where government works best, because we tend to be more issue-oriented than party-oriented, and so we see more of a direct action based upon what we do. And if we propose an ordinance or we make changes to the budget, then we can see some pretty immediate response to that locally.
Okay.
Statewide and national, it takes a while sometimes for these things to produce results, good or bad. And so it's hard to figure out. That's why it's a big guessing game.
Okay. Dr. Webb?
Well, yes, I would agree that on local boards, politics plays less of a factor. It's it's a part of being elected. But in terms of the issues, usually the issues are not ones where you would have the differences that we have at the national level. So I've always gotten along fine on the boards I've served on and the government bodies I've served on with people of the opposite party. And rarely do you see straight party votes on those issues. It's not as large an issue locally as it is nationally
Okay.
and statewide.
Right. All right. Well, in closing, what would be your advice, each of you, for people that are looking to get more informed before they go out and make their decision, for maybe the small percentage left that maybe haven't made up their mind? What would be your advice?
Absolutely, research. Absolutely, check out as unbiased a source as you can find. And that's really the beauty this year with these campaigns, is there's a lot of nonpartisan fact checkers going on out there. OMB and other agencies that are nonpartisan are taking a hard look at what numbers are proposed and whether those numbers are actually correct or incorrect. So the information's out there. All they have to do is look. And I would suggest very strongly that they cast an informed vote this year. It's critical to the future of this nation.
And Mr. Webb?
Well, I would agree, of course. The information is available out there, and there are nonpartisan groups that supply it. It's not as easy to. I mean, you have to make an extra effort
Well, yeah.
in order to do it, because if you just listen to the speech, and then you accept that. Well, you've got to do something else in order to find out, well, were those figures that this person used? But certainly a well-informed voter, I think is what we all desire.
It's our responsibility.
Then the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Robert Webb from the Coles County Democratic Party and Mike Weaver from the Coles County Republicans, we appreciate you both for stopping in on Newswatch in Focus today.
Okay. Thank you.
We are out of time, but we appreciate you coming in, and we hope you'll stay tuned next for the 4 Rivers Ag Report with Fred Peralta. Until next time, I'm Kate Pleasant, and thanks for watching. Wonder where we get our story inspirations from? Make sure to tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30 right here on WEIU to find out. Newswatch in Focus takes a local story from the week that was featured on Newswatch and goes more in depth. For more local news, weather, and sports, tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30. Thanks for tuning in to Newswatch in Focus. Is there a news story happening in your community? Let us know about it. You can email our newsroom at news@weiu.net. Call us at 581-2911 or write to us at 600 Lincoln Avenue, Charleston, Illinois 61920.